Michael Harris was blindsided and unfairly ticketed by his own HOA simply for hunting on land he legally leased. Led by the overbearing ex-cop Michael Donovan, the HOA abused its power, turning a peaceful hobby into a relentless nightmare. But Michael's bold move to buy new land and legally ban the HOA from it flipped the script entirely. Just wait until you hear how this fierce stand against tyranny unfolded, and why justice finally won in the end. Michael Harris wasn't just any guy who enjoyed hunting. For him, it was more than a hobby. It was a refuge, a way to disconnect from the noise of everyday life and reconnect with something real. Since he was a kid growing up in a small town, he dreamed of having a quiet place where he could spend weekends in the woods, tracking deer, listening to the rustle of leaves, and feeling the crisp morning air. After years of renting cabins and driving hours to crowded public lands, Michael finally found a quiet spot. A modest piece of land just outside a sleepy town in Idaho. It wasn't much, but it was his. A peaceful patch of wilderness where he planned to build a small hunting cabin and create lasting memories. That first weekend, as he unloaded his gear and stepped onto the land, a wave of calm washed over him. He could almost hear the future echo. Mornings with fresh coffee, evenings by the fire, the thrill of a successful hunt. But that calm shattered faster than he could imagine. On a chilly Saturday morning, just as Michael was preparing to head out with his gear, a convoy of vehicles rolled up. Out stepped several stern-faced people, members of the local homeowners association, led by Michael Donovan, a no-nonsense man with the kind of presence that demanded attention. Donovan was a former police officer, now the self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood rules. Without any warning or explanation, they approached Michael's truck. One of them handed him a citation, a ticket for hunting on the land. Michael blinked, disbelief flooding his mind. Wait, what? I'm hunting on my own leased property. How is this even possible? Donovan's voice was cold and firm. Hunting on this land is prohibited by HOA regulations. It's considered disruptive to the community and violates our standards. Michael's heart sank. He had read the lease carefully. The HOA didn't own the land, and there was nothing in the lease that restricted hunting. He was doing everything by the book. Yet here he was being punished for simply trying to enjoy his weekend retreat. The weight of the situation pressed down hard. It wasn't just the ticket itself. It was the principle of it. How could a small group of neighbors dictate what he could or couldn't do on land he legally leased? Why were they wielding this power like a weapon against him? That moment, standing there stunned and ticket in hand, Michael felt a deep, disorienting shock. The world he thought he understood suddenly didn't make sense anymore. A man could be penalized not for breaking the law, but because a few self-appointed watchdogs decided to flex their authority. And he was caught in the middle. It was the kind of shock that shakes your trust, your sense of fairness, and forces you to question where you really stand in your own life. Michael wasn't the kind of man to back down easily. After the shock of that unfair ticket, he tried to approach the situation calmly, hoping reason might still prevail. He gathered every document he had, the lease agreements, local hunting regulations, safety permits, and made his case clear. At the next HOA meeting, he stood before the board, speaking with quiet but firm conviction. He explained how his hunting activities were legal, safe, and respectful of the surrounding community. He promised to adhere to all safety measures, to be mindful of noise and presence, and to respect any reasonable boundaries. But Michael Donovan and the rest of the HOA board weren't interested in compromise. Their faces were hard, their minds made up. For them, it wasn't about fairness or legality. It was about control. Instead of backing down, they dug their heels in deeper. The harassment began to escalate, subtle at first, but growing more aggressive with each passing weekend. Michael started noticing unfamiliar vehicles parked near his property. Strangers claiming to be inspectors wandered through the trees, taking notes, watching his every move. The HOA sent letters threatening new fines, vague legal actions, and even warnings about escalating the matter to the county. But the worst part was what Michael heard from neighbors. Some of the nearby landowners, pressured and influenced by the HOA, began filing complaints about disturbances. Every weekend, his peaceful retreat turned into a tense battlefield. The joy of the hunt was replaced by a nerve-wracking battle of wills. Michael's initial shock transformed into something far darker, a deep, burning hatred. How could a small group of self-important HOA leaders turn their power against someone simply enjoying the property he legally leased? How could they wield their authority so arrogantly, poisoning the very essence of what should have been a personal sanctuary? He felt trapped, watching helplessly as the HOA tightened its grip, slowly transforming his slice of wilderness, his refuge, into a cage. Every step Michael took was met with resistance. Every effort to stand his ground was met with threats and manipulation. The people who should have been neighbors seemed intent on pushing him out. This wasn't just a dispute about hunting anymore. It was a fight against tyranny, disguised as community governance. And Michael wasn't about to let it go quietly. For weeks, Michael had tried to keep his cool, hoping the situation with the HOA would somehow resolve itself. But when the HOA announced a new set of sweeping rules, banning all hunting and shooting anywhere near their community, something inside him snapped. It was no longer just about him. It was about control, about power, about a small group of people trying to dictate every inch of the land, every moment of his freedom. Michael's anger boiled over. How dare they? They weren't interested in safety or community standards. This was about control, pure and simple. Their ambition was clear: to dominate everything around them, crush any dissent, and impose their will on everyone nearby. Michael wasn't going to let that happen. He made a decision, one fueled by fierce determination and a refusal to be bullied. Scraping together every dollar he had, tapping into his savings, and even taking out a loan, Michael set out to take back control of his life. He found a larger, more isolated piece of land just beyond the reach of the HOA's grasp. It wasn't perfect. It was a bigger investment, and it meant starting over. But it was his chance to reclaim his freedom. More than that, he made it clear in no uncertain terms: the HOA members and their agents were legally banned from entering or using this new property. This was no longer about just hunting. It was about standing up to an unjust system and protecting what was rightfully his. Every boundary marker on that land was a statement. Michael wasn't going to be pushed around. His freedom was not negotiable. For the first time since the ticket, a fierce sense of control and hope surged through him. This land would be his sanctuary, a place where he could hunt, live, and breathe without fear of harassment. The fight wasn't over yet, but Michael had taken a crucial step. He was no longer just a victim. He was ready to fight back. Michael's victory tasted sweeter than he ever imagined. The HOA leaders, suddenly, especially Donovan, were furious. Their angry threats and attempts to intimidate him bounced off the solid wall of the law. No longer could they bully him or impose their petty rules on his new land. That stretch of wilderness was his sanctuary, a place where no one could meddle or harass him again. But the win was about more than just personal freedom. Michael's stand became a powerful symbol for others, suffocating under the weight of HOA overreach. His story spread quietly at first, then louder, a beacon of hope for anyone who felt crushed by arbitrary rules and unchecked authority. He proved that with determination, patience, and smart moves, even the little guy could push back and win. Finally, Michael could do what he loved without looking over his shoulder, hunting, relaxing, simply breathing in the crisp Idaho air, all on his own terms, on his own land. Justice had been served. Satisfaction flowed through him, a deep, steady current that washed away months of frustration and anger. He wasn't just a man with a piece of land anymore. He was a man who reclaimed his freedom, and in doing so, reminded others they could do the same.